Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going over the results from the World's preliminary qualifying rounds. So we will be getting into that today, going over the decks that are making it to the next stage of Worlds, basically the top 4 finalists. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, many ways to do so down in the description. You guys can check them all out. But anyways, I do want to just give huge shout outs to Eggman, Aspira, Stage Zero, Melvin from Sensu Pop. I'm probably missing a few of you guys, but just awesome job doing the commentary, setting up the stream, making sure it was a very enjoyable experience for everybody. The stream looked really good, so I think that's really cool. Just want to shout out all those guys that you know, worked on this essentially. But yeah, we'll be getting into this. So firstly, I guess it makes sense to explain the format to any of you guys that either weren't able to tune in or just kind of didn't understand it, because at first I was a little confused too. But anyways, the way it seemed like, at least, there was 2 different groups. Obviously here we have Group A and Group B. Again, shout out to whoever put this graphic together. I'm not sure if it was one of the casters or someone on the Bandai side of things, but yeah, so we had Group A and Group B, basically 2 4-man pods, and they essentially played a round robin. So the top 2 players from each group, as far as I'm aware, that had the most points from each group were able to move on to the top 4. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they're doing top 4, if it's a person from Group A versus a person from Group B, or if the 2 people from Group A face off and then play the winner of the 2 people from Group B. I'm not sure. I don't know if they ever posted anywhere how that's going to necessarily go. I didn't watch every single second of Worlds because honestly a full day and a half was kind of long, and I had other stuff going on, but we do have the results here to talk about. So from Group A, we have Andrew Duvall representing America going on with Icarus, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, at least from the US side of things, Jared wasn't able to make it through with Android 16, which would have been really cool because he was playing a super rogue deck, which would have been awesome. But anyways, the other player from Group A moving on was Wang Po with the green starter Broly, which I actually have profiled here on the channel. So to my understanding, Wang Po was the first place player from the Asian Nationals, but he played Icarus at his Nationals. I actually profiled the second place list, which was the green starter Broly hand control deck, and I'm assuming him and CS and those guys must be friends of some sort, and they kind of convinced him to play green starter Broly. I would definitely love to know more information about how that deck choice came to be, because it's super sleeper, super out there. But yeah, he's basically playing a somewhat similar version of the deck that we profiled on the channel here with CS from, again, the second place position of that Nationals. So that's pretty awesome here. And then from Group B, we have Juan Soto from Chile going through with Gogeta Xeno, and we have Jeremy from France going through with Cell Surge. So we will talk about more of these decks kind of you know, in depth. We'll give a little bit of thought on like the matchups versus some of the other decks in the pool. But what's really cool is that there are 4 unique leaders going into the top 4 of Worlds, which again is just a really cool thing to note. I kind of expected maybe at least 2 Icarus, if not more. I think that's kind of a fair expectation, but again, we have a very unique 4 different leaders going to the finals of Worlds, which is pretty cool. So anyways, I figure we'll break it down deck by deck and see what we're up against. So again, we do have Cell Surge. Again, keeping in mind the different decks that are now in this top 4, we have Gogeta Xeno, we have Icarus, and we have the green starter Broly. So starting off with green starter Broly, I guess these are somewhat similar decks in respects of, you know, being green, being hand control, that kind of thing. But I think what green starter Broly has going for it in this matchup is the fact that the green starter Broly in some capacity plays a Broly chain. Now, I'm not sure if this version of the green Broly deck is maining or siding the chain, but regardless, it just gives green Broly a bit of that, you know, aggro edge, and aggro can do very well against Cell Surge. But I think what's cool about the green Broly matchup in terms of the green Broly side of things is that you can play it from either position. You can either, you know, never attack your opponent and just like take their hand away like they're going to do to you, and you actually have your own inherent self-awakening without ever having to attack them. But besides that, you can just be super aggressive. Again, if you're leaning into that Broly chain, I think that can actually give the edge to green starter Broly in that scenario. Against Icarus, it really is just like a grind fest. It really just comes down to a lot of like, do you have the BMS to stall their Awakened Leader side, to stall out their Deborahs if they're side decking them, stuff like that. So that can kind of go either way, but I do know, like, from the Icarus side of things, this matchup can be very annoying. So I could definitely see Cell Surge kind of squeaking that out. And then against Gogeta Xeno, I think most players kind of just look at that matchup and say it's one-sided for Gogeta Xeno, just like smashing Cell Surge. But from being on the Cell Surge side of this matchup and testing myself and just, you know, being on a team with a lot of really great Cell Surge players, the matchup's not nearly as one-sided as you might think. Cell Surge can use its Surge ability, mainly making everything enter tapped, to a really big advantage in that matchup. So I'm assuming, you know, Jeremy with Cell Surge here definitely knows how the deck operates and how to play the matchup. So I, again, would not expect it to be nearly as one-sided as you might be thinking at home from some of the other ways that people have talked about the matchup. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking as far as Cell Surge and how it can go through the rest of this tournament. For Gogeta Xeno, again, I think Cell Surge can be very 50-50 depending on how the pilots decide to operate it. The Green Broly one is a lot more interesting because it's kind of like an aggro mirror match, but again, the Green Broly deck has that access to hand control, which I think in some capacities can cripple Gogeta Xeno. Like if you just don't have enough combo power to keep pushing through, the Green Broly deck might be able to edge out a win. But at the same time, I am a little bit scared for the Green Broly deck because your hand is pretty much capped out at 6. So if Gogeta Xeno ever like squeaks out a bit of advantage, your 6-card hand is probably not going to be enough to deal with all the attacks they can put out. And of course you could have Dormant, you could have Boo on Adulterated Malice. So those are all things that can help against the Gogeta aggro. But again, I think like whoever catches an early lead here, I think can really snowball the advantage into a win in that matchup. And then against Icarus, I think yellow is pretty favorable against Gogeta Xeno, just like making thwarting enter rest mode with like Steadfast Goku, for example, and just having a huge hand to defend all the different onslaughts, having different you know, floodgate type cards like Robotic Riposte, stuff like that can definitely help in the Gogeta matchup. But again, I don't think it's like one-sided in any way. I think it's a matchup that Gogeta can definitely win, just not the most favorable from my experience. Talking about Green Starter Broly, this is so cool, man. Like, whoever would have thought that this leader in this deck would have made it to the top 4 of Nationals. We could have also been talking about Android 16, but that unfortunately ended up not getting too far. But at least we have a really cool rogue deck to consider here. I mean, it's actually also pretty representative of the meta, where, you know, you have your Gogeta Xeno, you have your Icarus, and you have your Cell Surge. Those are definitely, you know, many people's top 3 as far as the meta goes right now. But then you have this super sleeper rogue deck, kind of like we had at US Nationals with Android 16, but here we have Green Starter Broly hand control that also leans into a bit of aggro. So that's going to be a really big advantage for this deck going forward, being able to pivot, you know, into aggro when you need to, into a more passive hand control when you need to. And there are a lot of really cool interactions with this deck. I won't go over too many of them because, again, I do have the profile here on the channel if you want to check that out. But one of the really cool things about this deck is that you can just like combo cards like rebrand into the drop area. You can use Dormant Potential, and all these cards that cost you cards from hand, you're going to be able to swing with your leader and refuel back up to 6. Like, that's a really cool thing the deck has going for it. Again, though, like in the Gogeta Xeno scenario, I can see if they get a little bit too aggressive early, and you're kind of caught with your pants down, which is a 6-card hand, maybe you don't have Dormant at the time, I can see that being really hard to defend, you know, 7+ attacks in one turn. But I think, like, as long as, you know, the deck is somewhat kind to you and you're kind of in that driver's seat, the Green Broly deck I think is actually pretty scary. So that's a pretty cool thing it has going for it. We kind of already saw, you know, Green Broly versus Icarus. That was one of the matches that we saw on the first pod worth of games. So we kind of saw that matchup can go. It seems like it can be, you know, kind of advantageous for both players. Again, just totally depending how it goes. That's what the theme of this deck seems to be. Like, how much control can you take over the course of the game, but like early on. That's kind of how it seems to go with this deck, which is kind of cool. But yeah, this is going to be the one that I think most people are going to be excited about because it's super rogue, super interesting to watch, and it's definitely just a super new, like, you know, deck archetype in the format. And then we'll leave like maybe the best, if you consider it the best, for last, and that'll be Icarus. I think many people would consider this the top deck, but we're not being flooded by Icarus in the top 4 finals, which is pretty cool. But I think Icarus definitely has a horse in all these races. Again, Cell Surge can be annoying, but it's definitely super winnable for Icarus, and Icarus can win that matchup because you have access to Self Awaken. So Cell Surge can't stall your life out, at least for the entire course of the game. Gogeta Xeno, again, I do think is pretty favorable for yellow. I just think yellow has a lot of really good answers to what Gogeta Xeno wants to do. And now that it's mono yellow, you're not impacted by both True Fighting Spirits at the least. Only really the Goku True Fighting Spirit hurts you. The Vegeta, not so much, luckily. So that's really good. And as far as the Green Broly matchup goes, I think Andrew definitely has picked up some things if he has to play against that deck again. Probably took a lot of learning from his first matchup with the deck. And yeah, that's one that I'm really interested to see see how it goes. But anyways, guys, those are your top 4 decks going into the finals of Worlds, which is going to be next weekend. And yeah, by next weekend, we're going to have a world champion, which is kind of insane to think about. We've been asking for a world tournament format for a long time. Obviously, COVID threw a wrench in a lot of that because they announced it at second nationals, at least for the US. So we finally have it here, guys. It is webcam, so not perfect, but again, with the state of the world and how it is, we're kind of making the best with what we've got. But anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below, what did you think about the world stream? What do you think about the decks that made it to the top 4? Let me hear it, and I will see you guys in the next video.